Just starting soon. Excellent. All right. Good morning, everybody. For those of you in the chamber and online, it's just on 9 o'clock in the morning, and so I would like to declare today's PAR open. Before I kick into the formalities, for those of you may see online, we have our new member, a new independent PAR member, Graham McGlynn, joining us today for the first time. Graham has a wealth of experience in risk and audit committees across local councils throughout New Zealand, and a significant background in accounting and forensic accounting, especially. And so we really welcome Graham's skill set onto the PAR, and it will be especially useful over the course of this triennium as we look to delve into the numbers at a much greater level. So welcome, Graham. I just thought I might hand over to you for a brief minute to introduce yourself to everybody.
Thanks, Simon. Am I coming through okay? Look, firstly, apologies for not being there in person. I'm actually on the West Coast for an audit and risk committee meeting later today. So dialing in from Greymouth currently. Just a bit of background. I guess in council areas that I chair the audit and risk for Far North, Hastings, Tasman, West Coast Regional, and I'm an independent member on Wanganui and Huranui. And prior to that, I was on Environment Canterbury for 6 years until maximum term came up. So background is chartered accountant, background's actually auditing, and it's migrated into forensic accounting. I was a partner in one of the major national firms, and deputy chairman of the firm and things. I've got some other outside directorships as well in commercial entities and advisory roles. So that's a very quick précis. I look forward to working with Waitaki. I've spent a lot of time in the Waitaki area over the years, and particularly up around the lakes and with a fishing rod in my hand. So I do know the area relatively well over many decades. So that's probably a quick précis for me.
Fantastic. And I just want to very much welcome you on board, Graham. We're looking forward to having you at the table. I think in a time with so much change and a lot of risk around both our budgets, but also what the future looks like moving forward, it certainly is helpful to have both yourself and Simon at the table just for that external viewpoint. And I think, yeah, we really look forward to working with you. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Graham, and thanks, Mel. So we'll now move into the PAR itself. So I have an apology today from Councillor Schlark, who is unwell and can't be with us today, and I think we also have Sven dialing in from a family holiday on the Gold Coast. So welcome, Sven, and thank you for being able to join us remotely. Are there any other apologies that we're aware of? If not, can I ask somebody to move that we accept the apology? Moved by Dan, seconded by Mel. All those in favour? Against? Thank you, that's carried. And I'll now just check in and make sure that there are no new declarations of interest amongst any of the members. Oh, okay. With that, then...
Simon, I probably should just record that I've sent a register of all my conflicts into the council.
Oh, thank you, Graham, and Ali will have picked those up and we'll get those captured and recorded. So thank you. We'll now just move into confirmation of the public minutes. Happy to move. Thank you. Is there any feedback or commentary on it? Nope. So moved by Councillor Hopkins, seconded by Councillor McCone. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. That's carried. Also, I'd also like to propose, we do have a public excluded session today, but the only content in the public excluded session today is confirmation of the public excluded minutes. So I'd like to propose that if nobody wishes to provide any feedback on those publicly excluded minutes, that we also bring those into the council and have those approved. So is there any feedback on them? Excellent. Moved by Councillor Hopkins, seconded by Councillor Lewis. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. That's carried. So Ali will just note that public excluded will come in as 4.2. on the public minutes. Thank you very much. Okay, so we will move now into the meeting itself, and you will all be able to see that we have Derek Olsen online with us today from who's providing our audit and is dialed in today to give us a verbal update on how the audit is going, and what that means for us over the course of the coming months. So welcome, Derek.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, members of the committee. Again, thankful for the opportunity to be able to speak to the committee. Maybe just as a
sorry, Derek, are you able to turn your volume up a little nudge? I'm hard of hearing.
Let's just see. Is that better? Can you hear me?
Probably a little bit worse.
Is there anything
Is there anything we're just checking it at our end, Derek, as well.
Can you hear me now?
Pardon me? No, it's probably too much now.
Can you hear me? Testing.
Yeah, no, we'll go with what we've got. Sorry, Derek. Terry.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it looks like it's full volume on my side, so
that's all right now. Cheers.
Okay. Yes. So maybe just a precursor. We issued our audit plan on the 13th of March. I'm not sure whether the committee had an opportunity to look at the audit plan, because today is just a verbal briefing on how we've progressed against the audit plan. But maybe again, as a bit of background, we identified some key risks and issues that was documented in our audit plan, major ones being the revaluation on roading that will be performed this year, as well as fair value assessments on all other infrastructure assets. We also identified a risk area around intangible assets and the capitalization of that. It's an issue that has come forward from prior years, and also seeing that you are a mixed group with consolidating Whitestone Contracting, making sure that accounting policies align, and then also just looking at capitalization of fixed assets at year end. So looking at that WIP at year end, making sure that all assets that should be capitalized are capitalized. So those were some of the risk areas that we identified through our discussions with management and council at the initial stage of the audit. I think I mentioned also during the induction session that we've got an initiative whereby we try to bring as much work forward as possible. So there was a detailed timeline included in our audit plan whereby we scheduled 2 interim visits during the audit, or during this first part of the year. Both of those first 2 interim audits and visits have been conducted, and unfortunately we couldn't get all the work done that was scheduled. There were some staffing delays from management's perspective, as well as some process changes. So there are some areas that we still need to finalize as part of that process. We had further discussions with management around the possibility of maybe coming in mid-June. Again, I think with everything that's happening with or the full workload that council has at the moment, again, that was not feasible. So it does put our timeline at risk. We do have another visit in August, but that is to look at the revaluation. So not enough resources to effectively look at the work that we haven't had a chance to look at as part of the 2 interim visits. So I think as it stands, there is a risk that we will miss the deadline at the end of the year. And we are having conversations with management to see how best we can work through that, and what alternatives there are. And I think it's also for management to speak with council and make an honest assessment of what's realistic under the current circumstances.
Yeah, thanks, Derek, and certainly, as well, you'll be aware, and as well, the councillors are aware. There's a heck of a lot going on around here, at the moment. That's really, really important from a community and a council perspective. And so the focus for Amanda and Paul and the team has very much been on areas other than audit at the moment. And that's absolutely the right thing for them to be doing right now. And so unfortunately that does have implications for the audit timelines. So I appreciate you coming on today and giving us the heads up that it's pretty likely that there's going to be a delay. It's pretty likely that it's going to be challenging for us to be able to meet that end of year deadline. We get that. We accept that, and we will work closely with you. I especially will step in and work closely with you to try and help understand what the implications of those timelines are, and how we can best address the impacts of that going forward. But I certainly support Amanda and Paul and the team for the focus that they've had to show in areas other than being able to provide you with the numbers that you need over the current period of time, unfortunately.
Yes, no, and I think we fully understand that, and it's coming up with a realistic and reasonable time frame going forward that can accommodate everyone. That there isn't that unnecessary pressure at year end to deliver when we probably can see that it will not be achievable.
Yeah, there's no value in everybody rushing around trying to achieve something that's unachievable. So we'll work closely with you over the course of the next while. Does anybody have any feedback, questions, or comments for Amanda? Did you have something?
I just wanted to assure the committee that the key areas of focus are in hand. So the roading valuation is in progress at the moment. The fair value assessments for the other assets where it's a non-valuation year, we are obtaining independent indices and rates to use to apply that. So that information will be applied in line with the audit plan deadlines earlier than their final audit, and then the other items that he's touched on, intangibles and PP&E capitalisation, they should be completed as planned. Just in terms of not meeting all the requirements for the interim audit, just to highlight to the committee, we had a number of key roles. So you'll be aware that the people and capability manager left at around that time. And then we had someone step in to act in that role, was unfamiliar in that role. So it was just really difficult to provide that information at that time. The fixed asset accountant had been on leave for 5 months as well. And so there was a lot of this, we're still catching up in that area, but we'll definitely be caught up very shortly. And what was the other area? Oh, and obviously our financial accountant, we had an unfilled role there, which is quite crucial for the audit process. So I just wanted to assure everyone we're fully staffed again now. We have everything in hand, and we still will be able to provide the annual report and all the supporting documentation in time for the final audit.
Thank you. And I just reiterate my support of you and everything that you and the team are doing. I don't think there's anybody around the table here who would suggest that you haven't been doing your absolute best to try and make sure that you get everything done that you can. Councillor Hopkins, did you have a comment?
No.
No, just all right. You didn't.
Not having heard from Amanda, no.
Okay. Sorry, Graham.
Thanks, you, Chair. Just to say that with my background as a technical accountant auditor, and I'm currently an audit and accounting regulator in one of my other roles, I'm certainly available to assist the team if they have any technical questions, or again, if our auditor Derek is wishing to have a technical discussion on matters, I'm available to turn my hand to that if asked by the council.
Thank you. We'll certainly take that into account, and I'd be very happy for you to step in and have those conversations. Any other questions or feedback? Derek, did you have anything else to add? Obviously,
no,
we're going to be.
That's it. That's at this stage. Thanks, Simon.
All right, excellent. Thank you.
So if it's okay, I'll drop off.
Yep. No, thank you very much, Derek.
Perfect.
We appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the day.
Okay. We'll move on now to agenda item 5.2, which is the. You have a recommendation?
Well, there is on the agenda.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we should probably formalise that. So the recommendation that we have is that the Performance Audit and Risk Committee receives and notes the information from our auditor. Could I have somebody move that we accept that, please? Moved by Jim, seconded by Dan. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. That's carried, and thank you, Jim, for the reminder. So we'll now move on to agenda item 5.2, the financial summary. Again, because we are sitting in that 6-weekly cycle at the moment of PAR and council meetings, what we've got coming to us today are 2 sets of financials, the April financials and the May financials. I propose that rather than us talking to agenda item 5.2, the financial summary to April, which has now been and gone, and we've got updated numbers, that we take 5.2 as read and that we move on to 5.3. Could I have somebody recommend by Councillor McKone, seconded by Mayor Tavendale? All those in favour? Against? Thank you. That's carried. So we'll move forward to agenda item 5.3, which is the financial summary to the 31st of May. And Amanda, I'll invite you to talk to the paper, please. Sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I have some questions on 5.2. Even if it's taken as read, does that preclude the opportunity to ask questions?
No, absolutely not. If you've got a question on 5.2 that's not covered under 5.3.
Well, yes, I think I do.
Okay.
There are references in both 5.2 and 5.3 to this swing from a budgeted surplus to a deficit, and both of them reference the failure of the Crown to provide grants that it had promised and was committed to. And one of these 2 reports, I can't remember which one it is, I think it might be 5.3, actually identifies this as the principal or exclusive reason why we have an unbalanced, why we have a deficit at all.
Okay, so
is that
so I think
correct?
that's sorry. So I think that's genuinely covered under 5.3 as well. So we can talk to that as we go through.
Okay.
5.3.
Well,
I mean, we didn't have the grants in April.
No,
we don't have the grants in May.
That's fine. Let's then go to page page 16. There's a reference on 16 to personnel costs being, quote, slightly over budget by $1.15 million. Now, I'm just curious to know by what determination is 1.5 million, 1.15 million slightly over budget.
And I noted that as well, Councillor Hopkins. I think that it was a poor choice of word, and slightly. If we have a look at the updated one for May, the reference to slightly is removed, and it's so. Yeah, but it went in a big. But I think that the phrase slightly was probably inappropriate, and it has been removed for the May one. So I think if we can take both of those points, which are both spoken to in 5.3, the May update, and we give Amanda the opportunity to introduce the paper, then those questions will be able to be addressed through there.
Yeah, okay. One more. Going to page 19, and this relates to all, in my view, to all the issues we're confronting at the moment. And it relates to a long-standing issue that, in my view, is as problematic for the council as the ever-increasing cost of depreciation. And that's the clear evidence of really major shortfalls in delivery of budgeted work. There's a $4 million shortfall in roading. Can I just stop you there, Councillor? If you look at page 19, and then you look again at page 24, page 24 is exactly the same information, but with a month's more worth
of information behind it. So we'd be better speaking to page 24 than we would be speaking to page 19. I absolutely understand what you're saying, but we've got more up-to-date numbers that we can speak to. So if I may ask Amanda to introduce the paper, please.
Okay, so just mainly focusing on 31 May, given it's a month more recent. So with one more month of the year to go, we were looking with at a deficit of 3.3 million versus a surplus of about 8 million. So we're about 11.3 million behind budget. It's a very similar story to what we've been talking about for the last few months. It's largely due to our grants and donations being quite significantly behind budget, and total expenditure is slightly under budget as well, which is a positive. But yeah, we just haven't been able to come back with that significant lack of grant funding received in this financial year due to timing and other circumstances that we've talked about previously. We are having a big push in June right now to try and collect all of the revenue that we possibly can into this financial year, but there will be significant grants and funding for the event centre that will come in next year. The NZTA stuff hopefully will come in time, so catch up for this financial year, and we're also doing a big push on the Better Off funding grants at the moment. In terms of the balance sheet, CapEx is behind budget, as we've previously talked about. A lot of that has been carried forward into the 27 annual plan. And debt, we had 10 million rollover last week, so our debt position is still sitting as stated here at 31 May at 91 million. So that's slightly behind budget of 93.6 at 31 May, and it will be the same at 30 June.
Thank you. And so I guess to your point, Amanda, it kind of continues the theme that we've been talking about for the past several months. We're now about 20 million behind on our CapEx spend, yet our debt's pretty close to where we forecast our debt was going to be, which isn't a particularly good story. Our personnel costs are high. Those grants, we haven't got them yet, but we are, the expectation is that we will receive them at some point in time. But I will now open up for discussion. I know, Mayor Tavendale, you had your hand up.
Just first on the grants, and I'm just having a look through on page 21. We do talk to some of them. I just wonder if we can tease out things a little bit so that we've got a bit of a better understanding in that space. So under the event centre, which we've got 11 million sitting, or approximately $4 million in the Forester Gallery, we've got quite a few different amounts. Do you have a bit of an idea of what you are expecting this financial year and what the longer term ones are, just so we can get a bit of a clearer picture?
So there's a column there, the third one from the right, 12 months forecast. So we've in detail, we've looked at those different projects and what we can expect, and we're predicting 18 million out of the 30. So to collect, it's basically collecting the roading, the NZTA funding for that month to come through there. In terms of the event centre, I have provided a detailed list previously. So we have the naming rights, which is over 10 years. We have a couple of courts, which is over a few years. There's 2 courts still not signed up to, so it's uncertain when we'll receive that money. And then there's also a little bit of other funding that hasn't been secured yet. In terms of the Forester Gallery, there was a little bit higher received in the previous financial year than we expected, so it's a bit of a timing difference. We actually got some of that earlier previous year, and we have just in June received quite a significant final payment on that one. Better Off funding, it's kind of related to like doing the work and then subsequently claiming, so we are doing a push right now to get a lot of that. But yeah, that's the forecast, 18 million, so we're still significantly behind. It's 12 million behind there, and that's basically represents our deficit, and then that's debt funded because we don't have any other levers to pull, so that's how that all fits together.
When you say deficit, Amanda, the $12 million difference, that deficit's not because we're not receiving grants, but we haven't got the funding that we were expecting to get. Where does that? So if I take Councillor Hopkins' comment before that he's concerned that central government's removed grants that it had promised us previously,
That only relates to that, there's a roading program, the roading resilience program. So that was $1 million. And it's out for tender at the moment, 2-year project. So the timing of when you actually receive it after you've actually completed the work. You have to spend first and then you subsequently claim back to NZTA. So it can be a month or two later.
Okay. Councillor Lewis, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Through the chair, thanks, Amanda. Further to that, I was just wondering, have we had any real sort of explanations as to why the delays on some of that funding has come through? You know, it was expected, it was that would have been accounted for in their budgets. You know, thinking of the Forester, for example, and some of the NZTA, is it just basically them trying to balance their books and not get it out of the account quick enough? That's left us in this situation, or is there another explanation?
Yeah, well, they'll be trying to balance their books. I guess the main, in terms of all grants, really, you spend the money, you provide proof of that spend, appropriate spend, and then you do the claim. So it's always like a month later, maybe up to 2 months later. By the time you spend 1 month, you pay those bills next month, you put the claim in, and then you receive it might be 2 months down the track. So a lot of it's related to that. The event centre, we just matched up the income to the spend. So obviously the project was $32 million. Half of it was this financial year, half of it was the previous financial year. And in our budget, we just matched the revenue to the cost. We weren't aware at the time that things like the naming rights would be over 10 years and some of the courts would be spread out over future years. So we just matched it up.
Graham, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Are the management accounts, and this is probably a beginner question, so excuse it, but are the management accounts prepared on a cash basis, whereas these grants that are due to us and have been earned will be brought into the annual financials, the audited version, if you like?
We are on accrual basis, but that we need to have certainty of the grants if we can accrue them. So we have certainty where there is contracts in place now for the naming rights, and there's a couple of the courts, but where some of the funding is not clear about which year it will be in the future, we haven't booked that in the 27 annual plan.
If I may, through you, Chair, supplementary. So we will likely, before we sign the accounts off, get some clarity on particularly the government funding as to if we've been promised it and it is actually paid, we would be able to accrue it back into the 2026 accounts.
Just to be clear, the only government funding we have is the NZTA roading subsidy, and it's out for tender at the moment, so we will receive it once we've spent that money.
Excellent.
Thank you for those clarifications.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins, and then Councillor McCone.
Amanda, to quote Winnie the Pooh, I am a bear of very little brain. Your report says that we're $11 million short because we haven't been given the promised $4 million for the event centre, the promised $2 million for the Forester Gallery, and the promised better off funding of approximately $1 million. Is that correct? Is that money right? So we haven't, the cheques have not been in the mail.
When you say promised, there's
committed.
There's differences between committed. So we have contracts committed in place now for the naming rights of the event centre, which is going to span 10 years. In our budget, we thought it would be all this financial year, but now it will be over 10 years, a little bit each year. And same with the 2 courts. And then there's 2 courts which we have no commitment whatsoever. We have a commitment from the Event Centre Trust that they will find the funding to pay for the full build, other than the 10 million and the extra 5 million non-ratepayer funding that we've committed. So about half of the project is going to be funded by the Event Centre Trust, but that is not all secured right now. And we have uncertain timing of when we will receive some of it.
So that 4 million is not Crown funding, it's alternative sources. But the Forester Gallery 2 million and the Better Off funding is Crown grants.
The Forester Gallery, we have since received, I think, 615 in June. Yeah, the figures change now, so it's lower. So we're trying to receive all we can in this financial year. And I think some of it was received in the 25 financial year. So because some of these projects span balance date, we haven't been able to guess exactly which year we would receive them. The Better Off funding is from the DIA. They will only pay that out once we complete the spend and provide evidence of that spend and the reports of what we've achieved for the purpose that we sought it.
So just to close off Councillor Hopkins' question, the 2 million for Forester and the 1 million for Better Off funding is government funding that we can confidently expect over a period of time. The 4 million for the event centre is in sort of community funding, self-funding that we had budgeted for, that some is going to have a timing impact because of the way that the naming contracts have been negotiated, and some is still yet to be found. But that's up to the event centre to make sure that that happens.
Just to note for the Forester, the Friends of Forester were significant donors as well, and we also had a lot of private donations.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to hand over. Is it a supplementary or can I give? Okay, so Councillor McKone.
Thank you for that, Amanda. So according to that bullet point, revenue and external grants, we're still out by 4 or 5 million if you take out the currently coastal resilience project, which we're applying for but haven't got, as I understand it. So on that budget, how does that affect our bottom line for the balance date? And does that, so whichever, putting everything together, it'll net itself off, I presume, but the carryover and the debt that's there, does that go into a capital debt and then we start with a zero balance as of the 1st of July?
So if you look at that column third from the right, the 12 months forecast, I've tried to, as accurately as possible, forecast when we will receive funding and what our expenditure will look like at 30 June. It comes to a result of $3.4 million deficit, very similar to how we're sitting at May. So still predicting between $11 and $12 million behind budget of 8.6 at 30 June profit. So in terms of that deficit, it goes into our reserves. So we've got equity on the next page. You can see on the next page, on the page 23, our equity, our operating reserves there are negative, which is not appropriate, but that's where our reserves are dipping into the negative. So anytime we get a deficit, it goes further into negative there. And physically, in terms of paying it, we are borrowing to pay it because our reserves are in the negative and we don't have surplus cash on hand to pay these sorts of extent of deficits. So this is where we're coming from the annual plan as well, where we go into deficit, our operating reserves are going more and more into deficit and we're having to debt fund to pay our operating costs. So that's how that all works.
So basically it increases our capital debt.
Yeah, it increases our debt, which should be for capital. You should be borrowing against an asset, but in this case, we're borrowing against our operating costs. So we don't actually have capital. We're not securing it against any capital. It's not good practice at all. Which
goes to the bottom line of what we've been talking about for the past couple of months, right? We're close to where we should be. We're close to where we were budgeted to be with regard to our line, but with 20 mil underspend of capex, so the lion's share of that's gone into opex, which is, to Amanda's point, not cool at all. And that capex has been kicked down the road into the next financial year, where there's already a huge amount of capex planned for, which I think all of us are going to, quite rightly challenge the ability to be able to achieve that much spend in a financial year when we've not been able to do it any year to date yet.
Which is where I was trying to get to. So thank you.
Mia Tavendale, and then
I guess just to expand on that, and I think the capital program, which isn't probably sitting through the financials quite the same, but there is a risk in the deliverability of our capital program, particularly in the 3 water space, which we're well aware of, and are trying to step up and do what we can to. We've got essentially a water services delivery plan we've put out there in the community, out to DIA for approval. But in a sense, we need to step into the space to say that we're going to do whatever we can to deliver that program, because we've certainly been told that if we touch budgets in that space, that our water facilitator will no longer be a water facilitator, and that there will be a different level. So, there's a real clarity around here where, yes, we may have concerns around whether there's a deliverability, but the ability to take those budgets away and say we don't think we can do it, so therefore we'll push that out a year, is not in front of us whatsoever.
Thank you. That's a very useful clarification. Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Unrelated matter, although I think it's probably worth putting on the public record that the deficit, as you have identified this morning, is substantially influenced by the actions or inactions of third parties rather than ourselves. And I think it would be helpful, given the kicking we've had about our alleged incompetence, for that to be put on the record. Is that a fair suggestion, in your view?
I'll hand over to the mayor to answer that.
I think putting that on the record, that's a governance
Okay.
discussion to be had.
All right.
And I guess, it's part of our reality, but it doesn't take away from the fact that we do need to keep looking at our operational costs, and some of our discussions in the council meeting next will look at where we think there's opportunities. But we are essentially between a rock and a
all of
hard
that
place
is
in that.
agreed, but okay, well, I'll put it on the record at risk on my own behalf, if through no other authority or entity. The question is, why are personnel costs over budget by 1.3 million?
So a detailed paper on this was provided 3 meetings ago, maybe March. So there's kind of 2 aspects there. We are holding a few extra fixed term roles for, obviously there's a lot of change going on, the specific purposes that they're in place completing work. And then the other aspect is in terms of intangible assets. So where staff are working on developing an asset, that staff time, that payroll cost can be added to the value of the asset in the balance sheet. And because a number of those assets have been deferred into the next financial year, they haven't been completed, we cannot capitalise that staff time now.
And just to touch on the mayor's point before as well, Councillor Hopkins, the personnel costs have been a bugbear of mine and yours for some time now. And it is my commitment and absolute intention that over the course of the next 6 months, we take a very close look at those with a view to getting them not only just back on budget, but under budget for the next financial year. That's something that we absolutely have to commit to our community, that we will focus on and that we will do. Any other questions or comments on the financials that we've got here today? Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah, look, if you want, I do want to discuss the CapEx matter. And you said that it's dealt with here, and it is on page 24. To me, this is a long-term and intransigent problem, almost as bad as the issue of constantly appreciating depreciation. But the capital expenditure for the period is 20 million behind budget. We've approved to carry forward 17 million. Roading is about 5 million under. Water is astonishing. It's 7 million. Now, look, here's my view. It's time to say these optimistic carry forwards are untenable. And I would propose today that we move an agreed amount to be removed from the CapEx budget, because it will not and cannot be delivered. The evidence is inescapable. We have to stop doing this.
So if I may, I mean, that goes, I guess, I absolutely understand where you're coming from, and all of us around the table look at what we've been able to deliver over the past few years and how we've under-delivered consistently in terms of what our optimistic expectations are. But if we go back to what the Mayor was saying just before, with regard to water, we are stuck between a rock and a hard place with that right now.
I accept that.
So water, I think, is an absolutely separate discussion. And I'm just gonna give Mel and then Paul and then Mel the opportunity to address that.
Yeah, I'm on page 24, just to clarify. And some of these matters will be discussed in more detail at the Assets Committee, but to basically run through where we are at a high level with all of these, and probably push back quite significantly on the comment that Councillor Hopkins has made. So roading, that's basically down to two projects. One is the major rehab program that's improved as part of the 3-year NZTA program. It took approximately 6 months to find a project that was suitable, that met the criteria with NZTA, met their cost benefit analysis. That has now been tendered and the work is underway. The other one was the Coastal Resilience Program, which again is quite a technical project that took a lot of design work to actually come up with a solution that would meet, again, both Council's desire and NZTA's desire. That was always intended to be a 2-year program. So we've now done the work, and I believe again, that's another project that has been tendered, so will be fully delivered next year. In terms of water, half of the undelivered amount relates to the upgrades in relation to the Corridale schemes. Again, that was a piece that was frequently discussed at the end of the last triennium, with the very clear instructions to come up with the most cost-effective solution, including waiting for Tamata ROI to come up with acceptable solutions. That matter was discussed at the last council meeting and a contract awarded. A second major piece in relation to the water work is replacing the membranes at the Oamaru treatment plant. They're required to be delivered from overseas. So there have been, as you may understand, some freight delays over the last few months. So essentially all of that expenditure will occur in a very short space of time once the membranes are delivered and installed. So it's not a tricky project, it's just expensive, and then it occurs. In terms of sewer, this is a project where the tender process was approved at the last meeting. Again, responding to comments around the table to look at how we procure to deliver more effectively. That the main piece in there is the renewal of smaller diameter wastewater pipes that were featured in the water service delivery plan as an area that was of worst condition and of concern. Again, we looked for a more creative and long-term approach because there were 3 or 4 years worth of work in that space. Again, that project has now I think it's a 3-year project, has now been tendered and approved to deliver that with a solution that will offer the least disruption to the community. So again, that was sort of, that will all 2 years worth will be delivered in the next year, but again, that tender is contract is in place. In terms of parks, that's the underspend at the moment on the event centre. We were hoping to deliver that project under budget, and I think that has been reported to council. So that's not a lack of delivery, that's actually a good performance, although we are working through some of the commissioning issues now, which you'll be updated on that. And lastly, in terms of IT, we actually found one of those was one of the big projects in there was to essentially look at replacing our enterprise system. However, the IT team worked out that a more effective solution was to move that into the cloud. Again, that's a project that's been reported. And so that's actually a saving rather than a non-delivery. So I think the key lesson we've learned is probably be more careful about getting the timing right, especially of these multi-year projects when there is a significant commissioning and design period at the start of them, to make sure that they're actually, the budget reflects when we will actually be able to do the spending, rather than jam it all into one 12-month period. So there's sort of clarity about the amount, but then lack of clarity about the delivery and the progress we're making. So hopefully that addresses a lot of the issues. He's very aware of the undelivery in the past, the commitments in the delivery plan, but hopefully that's provided some assurance that we've been thinking about this year and the next year, and how we deliver those, particularly in time for the handover to Southern Water and meeting the regulatory requirements of Te Mata Arawai. So
Thank you.
that covers most of it.
Thank you, Paul. That's very useful. And in amongst that, I heard a smattering of good news around some underspend as well. So that's good. I guess that, yeah. So what I take from that is that you're relatively confident that a lot of the work that's listed here on page 24 will either occur or does not need to occur because of the way they've done it over the course of the next while. The challenge will be what the impact of that work is on the 26-27 capex, which we'll look at separately apart from this.
Yeah, but I think there's far more awareness of to have a multi-year view of these things, and then it's how we catch up our reporting to make sure that we're getting a good match between when the budget's sitting, actual delivery, and highlighting where there's a true variance in cost rather than just a difference in timing.
Yeah, no, thank you. Councillor Lewis, you had a question.
Thanks, Simon, through the chair. Just with regards to something you said there, Paul, you said it took 6 months to identify suitable projects with regards to the roading. A question I have is, were these projects priority? Did they need to be done? Or were we in search of something we could secure the joint funding from? I'm just thinking of considering the issues that we've had getting some of the funding back from NZTA in a timely manner. Are we setting ourselves up for an issue that we possibly don't need at the moment?
No, I mean, most of the roading program is well planned in advance, so and quite regular in nature. So things like metalling and reseals, we've certainly delivered those. It's the item was major rehabs, so that's essentially dig out the road, completely reshape it, and address a whole lot of issues. So, but that is the one where Wakakatahi has the most stringent criteria to get their matching funding, so it does require more work. So it is very much, well, here's an agreed amount. We're not searching for projects just to spend it. We're searching for the ones that will deliver the highest value, and sometimes that takes a bit of work to. You might have identified some failures in a piece of road, but then it's what's the underlying cause of those failures, what's the best way to address them in the long term, and really does that provide value for money. So it is very much a value for money question, both for ourselves and for our funder. But once that's agreed, they are very good at paying the next month once the claim is made.
Thank you. Councillor Hopkins, you had a question.
Thank you, Paul. I feel suitably chastened, but that was really useful information. And it does raise an operational matter. I just wonder if, in fairness to you guys and to us, and maybe as a point of clarity to the general public, an additional explanation about the reasons for the shortfalls in the reporting would be useful, because if that material information has been included in the document, I wouldn't have assumed some of the things I did.
I think we're always looking to learn, but I think it's probably a lot of that is really just sort of summarising information that I think either should be or will be going to the assets committee. So it's really getting the balance between the two. But yes, I think, like I said, we've learned about this, and we'll always look to improve things that'll enhance the report and clarify both yourselves into the point. But the big thing is to get the alignment right between when we're going to spend and when we show it in the budget, so we're not sort of continually explaining things that I think are under control.
Thank you. And look, I think it was very useful, and I think we don't want to make Paul and Amanda and the team have to spend hours and hours and hours putting lots of information here, and so it's that balance between the two. And I think having the discussion that we've had today has been really, really useful to be able to help get our heads around that. Roger, did you have something that you wanted to say?
Yes, thank you. To provide a detailed overview of the projects in the capital program, we have established a portfolio board, which is made of 3 directors and 5 senior managers. So we're now meeting monthly to monitor the progress, the initiation of the projects, and the time scale with which they're proceeding at. And as part of that board, we've also got the performance improvement manager, who's going to start a piece of work to look at the process that's involved in going from project concept to project delivery, and the number of steps that we have to go through to look at opportunities to take time out of that process and drive efficiency at the front end.
Thank you. And I guess that just reiterates the lens that we're all going to be applying over the next triennium as we look at where we can save money wherever possible. Look, if there's no further discussion on, sorry, Councillor Holding.
On other reserves, Amanda,
Which page are you on, mate?
Page 23. Can you explain that to me, Amanda? Under public equity.
Yep. So yeah, we've got our normal ratepayers equity, which never changes. We've got our revaluation reserves, which is where the increase in water, land and buildings and roading valuations gets put. And then we have the operating reserves, which I touched on earlier, which is to do where our deficits and surpluses and deficits go, all their normal operating. And then other reserves is where we hold things for specific purpose. So there might be bequests or donations or specific things. They're all ring fenced and lots of little different reserves. There is a full note breakdown. It takes about a page in the annual report. So they're all held there, ring fenced for specific purposes. Things like the RMA reserve is in there, all sorts of things. There's probably about 20 or 30 of them.
How it's starting to go up by 5 million.
Sorry, Councillor Holding saying under other reserves on page 23, we're seeing it go from 14.2 million to 20.06 million.
Yeah, that's correct. So the budget was 14. We largely budget on prior year actual. It's very hard to estimate what level will go in there, and things like the RMA, and what level they'll be used during that financial year as well. So we kind of try to underestimate, don't want to exaggerate what we think we will receive in that area, but definitely we're sitting at 20 million right now against a budget of 14. There will be a lot of year-end transfers and things out of it. So where we've spent on an asset or an operating cost and it needs to be funded from one of those specific reserves, there'll be some year-end processes where that funding comes out of those reserves. So it will reduce at 30 June.
Thank you. Look, I think that's been a really useful discussion, and it's certainly given us real clarity around what we need to focus on and look deeper into over the course of the next while. If there are no further questions or comments, could I ask somebody move that we receive the financial update from May? Moved by Councillor Hopkins, seconded by Mayor Tavendale. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. That's carried. We'll move now on to agenda item 5.4, the Treasury strategy. And again, I will hand back to Amanda to introduce the paper.
Okay, so this is a report you receive quarterly. We also provide a similar, like a retrospective report, the Treasury report. The Treasury report comes at the end of a quarter, and this is the setting the Treasury strategy ahead of the next quarter starting on 1 July and it goes till 30 September. So we're proposing the same strategy for that, for the full financial year, but specifically for that quarter. To do with reporting cash and projecting future cash requirements, so keeping that really tight rein on cash, liaising with our GFA, which is our principal lender. We obtain advice from Bancorp Treasury Services, so I touch base with him on our borrowing requirements and meeting our thresholds, and investing funds. If and when we have any surplus funds, we also discuss those with them.
Thank you. So before I open up to the floor for discussion, there's just a couple of things that I wanted to mention in here. One, there's an error on page 27 under the Oamaru Whitestone Civic Trust line, where under the section note, a report is included in the council meeting on 23 to renegotiate the $341.5 million term. I don't believe we're got a $341 million. So that should be thousands. So just before anybody starts to look into that a little bit deeper. And I guess the other thing for me too, Amanda, at the top of page 26, we open up with the sentence, key operating and personnel costs are relatively stable and consistent throughout the year, and these are generally covered by operating revenue. I reckon we need to take that sentence out because this year's proven that that's absolutely not the case. So just to make that point very clear.
Yep, sure. And I just want to clarify as well, just reading that sentence again about Oamaru Whitestone Civic Trust. I've said unable to meet this term. I just want to clarify because that report is actually in non-public. I just want to publicly clarify that they actually do have the funds to meet that term, but they would like to use it for other purposes. So we'll talk about that further in non-public section of council, but I just want to be very clear they actually physically could pay the cash.
Thank you. That's a great point of clarification. So I'll now open up for discussion to the Treasury report. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Councillor McKeown.
Just one, it's pretty standard and you know, probably what we accept here. Are you comfortable with the rate that they're given, the variable rate they're giving for borrowing and the interest rates given the way the current situation is in the world? So have we got enough margin, I suppose, what I'm asking?
We charge a 2% margin. So I think that's pretty standard on top of, so whatever interest rates ours fluctuate to, we add an extra 2% when we on charge that to other entities. I guess the main concern would be the timing delay. So if there was going to be a significant change in interest rates for us, it's not until the next quarter, or sometimes it might be annually that we reset the rates with the other third parties. So there can be quite a delay. So it's not so much the margin that bothers me, it's more the timing delay. We might be caught paying a higher interest rate and then not be able to recoup that until the next reset, which may be quarterly or annually.
And Amanda, you've done a lot of work over the course of the past triennium to try and reduce what you refer to that as the mismatch. And so there's been a lot of work done over the past triennium to try and reduce that mismatch, but we'll continue to refine that over the course of the next while. But if we look at for the forecast interest rate costs, they're sitting at around about the 3.7, 3.8% mark forecast going forward. If we look at most of the loans that are sitting there on page 27, we have the ability to be able to reprice. I guess the one that stands out a little bit there, Amanda, is the Kurau Duntroon one. We were sitting at 3.75%. So that's not making us money at the moment.
Yeah, well, that's a bit of a special circumstance given their financial situation. So
no, I appreciate that, but I just wanted to make it clear that that was one of the ones that we didn't have the ability to be able to reprice. Metavana.
Just one of my questions was on that one, because obviously we reached an agreement December 2024 and the interest rate hasn't been reviewed since 2025 and is obviously sitting on the low side as well as non-principal payments happening. Is there I would have an expectation that we're going to have another conversation before we're talking about the the longer term. I just wonder when we look at this, because we are sitting in a low interest rate and no principal repayments. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so at the time that this was negotiated, it was basically the alternative was writing off the loan and not getting any funding whatsoever. And given their financial situation, this is the agreement that was reached. That interest is one where I'm talking about. It's reset annually, so it'll be reset on 1 July 26. So it'll be based on our current interest rates at the moment. So it will increase probably about 1%. And yeah, that is a long-term agreement. It's out until 2034. It's probably not, it's a conversation we could have with them to open that agreement, but it's not subject to renegotiation anytime soon.
I think to the Mayor's point, it's certainly something that we'll want to keep an awareness of and an eye on.
Yeah, I thought I'd seen a longer term in year 2034. That's wasn't in this part, but I've read that somewhere else in one of your reports that that was long term. It's probably just those kind of things that as a group we probably need to spend a bit of time unpacking, because we do have a number of loans out, and we've got a number of loans in the public excluded space coming to us today, and that comes back to that, you know, whether council's a bank conversation, but also the risk of the entities that we've got loans out with falling over as a result of us pulling money. If they don't have the money there, then that's not a real conversation to be had either, because you're not going to find what you're looking for by sinking another party. So yeah, a bit of a issue there. And I guess just the other thing I wanted to touch on was the LGFA, and we've certainly had some conversations with the LGFA of late, and certainly through the DIA as well, and Amy Adams, and there is some concern in that space, and I think we just need to be really mindful of that. Essentially, they know that all councils are going into a rates cap environment, which I guess a lot of their security for councils before that has been in the space that they can rate to get what they need to be covered, so that there is their baseline security. When you put a rates cap into that space, then they are losing some of that security. So there are some councils that are probably watching more than others about whether or not they're covering their costs with their rate take, and that's probably a place that we very much are in as a council. So yeah, it's very much part of the conversation at the moment.
Absolutely. That's something that we'll definitely be focusing on. Councillor Felling, I see you've got your hand up online.
Yeah, just a question on the Coorad Dunshroon one. I was reviewing their accounts online there. Is it fair to say they're stable or improving their position? I don't think they're yet in a position to take on any more burden on the loan, I agree, but yeah, do they seem to be improving a bit?
Yeah, I think that's a fair call. It's definitely improved a lot since that agreement was reached a couple of years ago. They definitely were struggling at that point, but I think, yeah, it seems fairly stable.
Which is a real positive. Thank you. Councillor, sorry, hang on. Councillor McKone.
Sorry, going back to my other question, I suppose, regarding interest rates, how exposed are we as a council to the money we have borrowed? So I see we've got fixed rates at 3.7 or thereabouts, but how much of those rates are fixed on the floating or on commercial papers that are exposed to, I suppose, whatever terms the loan is and daily interest rate changes, or where we sit?
These are fixed. We don't have much exposure. Obviously, we don't have hedges in place or anything like that, so we're not too prone to interest rate movements. And obviously, we've got policies in place to ensure that we have it's spaced out over the year to try and cater for any sharp increases in interest rates. So yeah, we have processes and thresholds in place to make sure that lessens our risk.
And I've reviewed that, and in fact, you will know that we've seen it. We see in previous, and we will see in future PARs the buckets that those sit in, and I'm relatively comfortable that the way that the team's managing it means that there is very limited exposure to significant short-term changes in interest rates. Amanda.
Yeah, just to highlight, this references the Bancorp report as well, which they complete quarterly for us. It was presented at the last PAR committee. So have a good read of that. They have that oversight for us as well. They report on our thresholds and how we're achieving them and what the forecast looks like.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis.
Thanks, Simon. Through the chair, Amanda, just with regards to Amarama Airfield, I know that we're the loan was due for repayment by May, late May this year, and there's something coming to us in the next meeting, in the council meeting, to renegotiate the facility. Are we comfortable? Are we comfortable with it?
I guess that's probably a discussion best held in the next session, if that's okay. Thank you. All right. Any further discussion on the Treasury report?
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to move the I will move the recommendation. I still think our Treasury strategy is unduly cautious, and I understand why. But I think in the environment we operate, we as elected members and staff should be putting more thought into and more emphasis on 1D as included in these recommendations. But I will move the recommendation.
Thank you. Can I have somebody second that? Seconded by Councillor Lewis. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. That's carried. And thank you, Amanda, for all the work that you and the team have put in to bringing us these papers today. We'll now move on to agenda item 5.5, the June 2026 risk management update. And I'll hand over to Jo to introduce the paper, please, before Ken speaks to it.
Many thanks. Just to note that this is for Q4. There is an error through the document which indicates it's in Q2, but the primary narrative does indicate Q4. So apologies for not picking that up in the review process. Just wanted to note two key pieces of work that Ken's done a significant amount of work on. That's the fuel risks, which you might remember 3 months ago, I believe, PAR requested for us to really detail the fuel risks that we were facing, recognising that there has been some stability of supply in this space. However, the risk will remain until things really settle down with the geopolitical situation. The other one is the staff well-being, and this is relative really to the pressures that we're seeing from community and some of the hostility and aggression that unfortunately our staff have been subjected to in the recent period of time. So with 2 very high and 21 high risks of note, just recognising that there is stability amongst the risks. However, we do continue to be in quite a high risk environment. So just gratitude to Ken and the work that he's done in this area with the team. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ken. I'm the Risk and Assurance Advisor for Council. The report that I will be presenting today will give an update on the risk management activity across the organization for Q4 2026. It will outline Council's key risks and inform discussion in both the external and internal risk landscape, highlighting where operational pressures, compliance requirements, climate impacts, and sector-wide uncertainty continue to influence Council's overall exposure. Council's current risk exposure remains stable but elevated. The risk assessment does not show a broad deterioration from the last quarter, but the level of residual risk remains significant. The main point is that Council is operating in a high-pressure environment where risks are increasingly interconnected rather than isolated. The 2 very high risks remains unchanged, that being affordability and financial sustainability and climate change. This continue to be the most material risk to Council's long-term sustainability, service delivery, community outcomes, and public confidence. We have risk clusters ranging from very high, high, and medium. The very high clusters, as I've said, remains unchanged with affordability and climate change. The high risk cluster is now the core of Council's risk profile. It includes financial pressure, reform, infrastructure, supply dependency, emergency management, data, credit exposure, and fuel impacts. These risks are actively managed, but many are affected by external drivers Council cannot fully control. Medium risks remain important watch list risks as they are currently more contained, but could escalate if costs, reform, legislation, climate, or service delivery pressures intensify. The main pressures we have right now are compounding effects of financial pressure, fuel escalation, climate exposure, reform uncertainty, LTP delivery pressure, and workforce well-being impacts. These pressures are now reinforcing each other. For example, fuel escalation affects Council costs, contractor costs, capital delivery, and community affordability at the same time. It seems that because of the interconnectivity, the nature of these risks, it kind of sounds like more of a domino effect. A significant proportion of the register is also externally driven or externally amplified. Council cannot control fuel prices, central government reform, climate events, and borrower performance. Political reform is a major risk exposure. Head Start, wider local government reform, and Southern Waters are creating uncertainty over future structure, governance, local voice, service responsibilities, assets and liabilities, staffing, financial settings, and LTP assumptions. This directly affects Council's capacity and resilience. Council is trying to maintain BAU operations, capital delivery, annual plan, the LTP, and reform activity using the same people and specialist capacity. That creates prioritization pressure and increases the risk of delay, rework, fatigue, and reduced delivery quality. We have notable changes for this quarter as well. First being staff well-being and workforce risk. This gives clear visibility to the impact of sustained workload, reform uncertainty, affordability pressures, and community responses on staff morale, availability, and retention. Rising software costs is also proposed as a high risk. This is now an organizational cost pressure rather than an ICT issue, because software supports core council functions and recurring subscription increases reduce budget flexibility. Credit risk failure by a borrowing entity is proposed to increase from medium to high. This reflects the need for continued oversight of external lending exposure, including borrowers under financial pressure and repayment arrangements that are still being worked through. The LTP risk as well is proposed to increase to high. The LTP must be completed by the 30th of June 2027, but it is being developed in a constrained environment with reform uncertainty, limited specialist capacity, affordability pressures, and uncertain future service settings. Lastly, we have fuel-specific risks. The immediate exposure is financial and economic, with secondary impacts on service continuity, workforce resilience, regulatory delivery, and community confidence. The key message for Council is that the risk profile is not deteriorating across the board, but it remains exposed to a sustained and compounding risk environment. The control environment is active and improving, but many controls provide visibility, coordination, planning, and response, rather than direct reduction of the external drivers. The appropriate governance focus is continued monitoring, disciplined prioritization, and a targeted assurance over the risks most likely to affect financial sustainability, capacity and resilience, service continuity, workforce well-being, and LTP assumptions. That would be all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you for that very thorough introduction. I think so. What we're looking at here today, if we go to page 31, there's a few new risks. So remember a couple of meetings ago, when we were really starting to get concerned about the potential impacts of the fuel crisis, that we wanted to introduce some very specific fuel risks to the team. So Ken and the team have brought those here today. There's one that I would challenge, that being the last one around the fuel-related workforce wellbeing and availability. And Ken, you and I spoke to this yesterday. I feel like that's a really explicit point in time risk, which I'm happy to accept for now, but I think probably could have just been wrapped up in the wider affordability risk that we've got going on here. It's not just it's not just a risk of our staff being able to put fuel in their cars to get to work, but it's a whole community issue for that one. The other one that I challenge is the explicit software cost risk. And again, Ken, we spoke to that yesterday. We've known all along that the software contracts that we have escalation clauses in them. Those escalation clauses are being exercised, and so for me, that's a budget issue that we need to address through the budgeting process rather than through an explicit risk. And again, as we spoke to yesterday, even if that risk does stay in here, it doesn't meet the criteria for high, because if we look at the $2 million underlying cost, that was a cost in any case. If we look at the 5 or 6% escalation factor, that's $100,000, which is a lot of money, but not high enough to make it a high risk sitting on here. And then the real risk that you've identified and correctly pulled in here today, that I would really appreciate feedback from people on, is around the staff wellbeing. I don't spend all of my time in this community, but when I do, I certainly see the impact of the current environment and the effect that that's having on staff, and it concerns me and upsets me, and I really want to understand what we're doing in terms of treatment or management to help people as much as possible. So that's my opening remark. I'll open it to the floor now for further discussion. We've got, is that Graham?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. You've touched on some of the points I was proposing raising, but the psychosocial workload pressure with all the reforms having to do more with less. I wonder whether this committee gets EAP comparative stats from the Employee Assistance Program as to details at a very high level, and I've seen it at some of the other councils, as to which ones are work related, which ones are personal related, what the nature of them is, and a wee bit of demographics at a level that doesn't expose personal information. And that can be a really good indicator about what's going on out there. The other one I'd noted specifically was under fuel risks. I'm seeing evidence that other councils of suppliers trying on contract variations which are not actually available in terms of the contracts they're in. So perhaps being aware of that when you get cost escalations coming in to make sure that, and going back and checking the validity. I'm wondering also whether there is a specific set of risks being identified with the Head Start project that council should be aware of, and I've certainly shared a generic one with our chair, which he may choose to pass on, just to share the knowledge and development from other councils about risks that they have identified that they need to be thinking of as we engage through in this period leading up to early August, when we need to submit something through to the powers that be in Wellington. So those were a couple of 2 or 3 high level points. I will enjoy getting further into things with Ken in due course when I'm on site. But those are just high level observations. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. And in fact, when Ken and I caught up yesterday, I did share that that Head Start template with him, and we'll look to potentially work something up and share it with the committee members. Mayor Tauranga?
I would support that, and it does sort of fall into the political uncertainty and the capacity and resilience risk, but it is certainly just a bit of a unique one of its own type risk we've got ahead of us at the moment. And I think it has an effect on just about every one of our work programs, depending on how that lies. There's not a lot we can do in that sort of space at the moment in mitigation, apart from, I think the community meetings are going to be a really good start of stepping into a direction for us. Irish Matata last night was a really good conversation. I'm not sure where the questionnaires and things are going to land on that, and that will be really interesting just to get an idea of what the community's thinking is in directional sense and stuff. Yeah. Because a lot of the risk sitting around the Head Start in the first instance, which is the really short-term risk, is whether or not we can actually make a decision, whether we can viably step into the Head Start process, and then what falls out of that. And I guess that's why potentially having an individual risk is possibly quite helpful at this stage, because that capacity and things that sits across the organisation in a number of different reasons, but the Head Start puts that in a whole different lens. So I think that we probably need to kind of treat it almost separately because of political uncertainty, and then stepping into the conversations around things like your long-term plan. And I've had a few different chats with Alex on this one here, because some of the conversations I'm having with our local MPs and some of our other ministers around are certainly around the workload requirements of small councils in particular, and things like your long-term plan coming forward. But in saying that, when you've got an organisation as well, on the flip side, that's got water moving out of it, we need to understand what our long-term planning is. But I guess the hoops you jump through to get a proper long-term plan over the line at the moment, where there's so much uncertainty, and the ability to plan 10 years in advance and really have anything that's meaningful in the last 5 years at least of that plan is just about impossible. So I think that there's a conversation we need to have, because our MP Miles is very much sort of looking for a bit of direction in that, and the conversations he's having with Minister Simon Watts is around that. In the speed of everything, can we pause long-term plans? And while there's another risk that comes into play with that one as to how we do our long-term planning, I think what we need to be doing is moving into a medium-term planning to say, how do we reset ourselves up as an organisation, but recognise that the 10-year look ahead right now is going to be having more assumptions and more problems than it is helpful. So yeah, I think there's a fair bit to unpack in that. And I think part of the risk, and that's going to sit around today, is our annual plan as well, and what risk that has on workloads, and also the risk around timeframes and not meeting our legislative timeframes.
Thank you. That's super useful context. And I think what I'll take away from that, that there is a desire for us to work up a specific Head Start risk. Ken and I will work with that, and we'll definitely use Graham's experience and background with what he's pulled together with other organisations over the past while to bring something back to you. I'm conscious that we've got Councillor Felning online with his hand up, so we'll go to you first, Sven.
Yeah, the risk, the financial affordability, financial sustainability and affordability risk at the top there. I was wondering if there'd be benefit in splitting those two out, because one's affordability to the ratepayer to pay the rates, and the other one's the council's financial position, which are two different things. And under the controls, with the main one being long-term planning considers the cost versus affordability. Just wonder if they might benefit from being split out and fleshed out a wee bit more as to what we do about them.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point, and I can work through that with Ken as well. Thank you. Did you have anything additional, Sven?
Yeah, thank you. No, that nothing beyond that on the risk session.
Thank you. We'll take that. And also, just going back to Graham, your comment around EAP and stats, I think that would be a useful thing for us to be able to explore at a high level too, if we're able to do that. So we'll look to that also. Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Picking up on the Mayor's observations about long-term plans, I know the Minister has said in response to questions precisely on that matter that an abbreviated or shortened long-term plan period is worth looking at. I've already suggested we only do 3 years, because in point of fact, in 3 years' time, this council may not, it's very likely that it won't exist, that it'll be part of an entity which we have to actually share with the government by August, and which they hopefully will agree to. So from that point of view, I think an analysis of the risk associated in terms of time wasting and cost in regard to a full 10-year LTP is well worth consideration. I also share the two concerns that the Chair raised. I would take out field-related workforce wellbeing and availability in the recommendation. And in relation to the two matters that you raised, Mr. Chair Simon, I just wonder, with regard to staff wellbeing on page 36, whether we need to include elected members as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, put some, sorry?
Absolutely.
Well, yes, because, yeah, we know there's been at least one reported death threat, and I believe that warrants identifying elected member wellbeing as a risk as well. And with regard to the software costs, I just wonder if that's personally, there are some of our software providers that I wouldn't be paying a cent to now. No, seriously, I want to put on record, there are documents that I haven't received for 3 weeks because of the stupid system of getting a code, and you can't engage with anything, or I can't engage with anything on any platform. And it's just absurd. And it's the software provider covering their butt and protecting the shortcomings in their own systems. And frankly, I'd quit them altogether.
Thank you for that.
Here's my question. Is the real risk, and this is something that was brought up last night at the Otamatask meeting, is the real risk with regard to software the incompatibility of operating systems through councils in Otago and in Canterbury? The point was made last night that there are a plethora, a multitude of different systems in different councils, and none of them talk to each other. Indeed, the representative from Mackenzie actually said at the meeting, our systems won't talk to yours, i.e. Waitaki's. So my question is the real risk that incompatibility, and should we be doing an inventory of our software systems to see where they are currently incompatible with the systems of others?
So thank you, and I understand your frustration with regard to some of the codes and bits and pieces, Jim, which we can deal with. But I'm going to hand over to the Mayor to respond to that firstly.
So just a couple of things on that. So the compatibility issue, absolutely, that's a risk, and it's a problem that we've got across the country, and that's one of the conversations around the Systems Improvements Bill, but also just the need for reform in general. There needs to be, when it comes to some of our platforms, a national view of this, because it is insanity, and we may have a system that another 15 councils across New Zealand have, but there's another probably 4 or 5 lots of systems for the rest of the councils across New Zealand, and then that might be just for planning, and then you've probably got a different one for your finances, you've got a different one for your billing, you've got a different one. Like, it's insanity, absolute insanity, and what it does is drive the costs up. And I think Mackenzie were talking about $600,000 around just program software costs. The issues you're having are around Authenticator, and that is an international company that couldn't give a damn is what we're up against. Yep. And the reality is some of the baseline products that we work to are holding us to ransom in that space, and it's not just councils, it is across the world that these issues are at play. So I don't think some of the risks, we've got to be realistic, we're going to fix.
Yep.
Now, just to talk to the long-term plan, sorry, I know, to talk to the long-term plan, I think what I want to be really clear on is I agree with you that potentially a shorter version is what we need to look for. We still need to have that sent down from central government. So that's a direction we can have. The messaging from the minister has sort of been what you indicated, but it has been that will be for the councils that are approved to step into the Head Start proposal space. And so there's 2 stop gates in there for us. First of all, we have to be able to, and that is in early July, which is we've got very, very short timeframes in front of us. In the next 3 weeks, we need to decide, do we want to be heading into Head Start pathway and what direction we're going to head into? And our community meetings may help in that conversation, but it's going to be really hard, and we're going to be lacking in data around that. So we've got that decision to be made, and then it needs to be seen by central government that it's approved before the conversations on whether or not we can have any leniency on things like your long-term plans, things like your spatial planning and all that. Any leniency on that is going to only happen for those stepping into the Head Start pathway, and that's one thing the minister's been quite clear on. So there's risks at play there too. So I don't think we go off and say, sweet, we'll do a 3-year plan off our own back, because that won't pass muster if we don't step into the next phase.
But I think everybody around the table appreciates the value in a shorter plan in the current environment. Councillor Cowles, you had a comment as our elected IT specialist.
No, I was just going to say, I've already had this conversation with a number of our surrounding councils. There's 3 main environments that councils work within that are available, and we're all on, not all, but widely on different ones, and most of them don't talk to each other. And I guess that's the crux of where we're heading. It's one of those really big things that we can talk about, but that'll be a fairly large decision as to what's going to deliver the best overall value. And as for the authentication, but it's a worldwide 2-factor authentication thing, and no matter what piece of software you use, I use an awful lot of it outside. That's just the international standard, unfortunately, now. But the real risk is if we don't do some of that, some of the data that we have leaks and is not secure. And so that's the world we live in. There is an awful lot of people trying to get data and hold people to ransom these days. And it's pretty important that we make sure that's secure.
So I think some of those, just to back you up, some of those bigger decisions around entire systems are something that obviously we should be deferring until we have a clearer understanding of what our future looks like. But in the interim, and a proposal's going to the General Council meeting today, that we have some workshops that do deeper dives into bits and pieces. I think in the interim, we can absolutely have a focus on software and software costs, and where possible, where we can kind of make those as efficient as possible. We've got Councillor Lewis and then Councillor Felning.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, just to that end, with regards to the software side of things, I think one of the risks is that we are locked into a longer period in a contract with regards to the software that we use, and which means that we're either doing a lot of work on it and not able to utilize it going forward when things change, or that we put ourselves in a risky position where it's going to cost us a lot to get out of it. So I think, you know, we've just got to be conscious of what we lock ourselves into in the sort of near to medium term.
Thank you. Councillor Stelman.
Just I note and agree with the Mayor's comment regarding being held to ransom to a degree by some of them. We've had a good breakdown of a lot of our systems and the costs and the benefits. The ones that cost the most are the one where there's a degree of monopolisation. So we've got to be a little bit careful about the trade-off between any narrowing down the numbers of systems that are used, where it might reduce competition as well, just as an overall thought as we go into the Head Start space.
Thank you. Any further questions? You have one, Councillor McKine.
Yeah, and look, I'm going to eat a bit of humble pie because the risk register and I don't agree with that process, but this is actually quite good because it's starting to identify stuff that we need picked up on that normally goes underneath the radar. So top kudos for that.
But Ken, that's a huge pat on the back. Councillor McKone says the risk register is actually quite good.
But
That's a triumph.
But how flexible is the business to actually, once we identify this, to actually start actioning a solution to what we've got, or you know, how fast does that actually move once we're identifying?
With regard to software?
Well, any of these things, you know, where do we start? It's great to see it here. That's awesome, but when does that process actually start?
So I think once we potentially kick some of these workshops off and we've prioritised what it is that we want to look at first, then we'll start to do things pretty damn quickly. I mean, we need to. That's exactly what we have to do for the community that we represent. Sorry, Councillor Hopkins.
So, Mr. Chair, in relation to that matter of workshops, would you deem it necessary to have a recommendation, or are you quite happy to just accept responsibility for organising those workshops yourself?
Well, I think so. There is a separate agenda item going to council today, which will talk to that,
okay.
And then off the back of that, we'll be able to then make progress. But I'm certainly happy to take responsibility. Mr. Cook.
On that basis,
Mr. Cook had a comment to make.
I'd like to give the members some warm and fuzzy feelings. The building control authorities in the Southern Cluster, which is the 11 building control authorities in the South Island, have over a period of time now moved to a common building consenting system, and that allows interoperability between the teams. So this week we have 2 of our team processing building consents in this building for Central Otago. And we've also got one of our inspectors in Central Otago working in their system doing building inspections, which are exactly the same format as he'd be doing if he was in Waitaki. So we are taking those opportunities as they come up.
Thank you. Joy.
I just wanted to come back to Graham's point regarding the EAP stats, and I know historically they have come to per our council. But we do have a relatively new health and safety advisor who I'm sure will be reporting on those stats at some point, and so that information will be coming to you. But just to note, they won't sit with Ken, but they will sit with health and safety in the people and capability area.
Thank you. So look, on the basis of just so just looking at what the recommendations are today, based on the discussion that we've had, I think we're all relatively comfortable with the increasing the risk rating of the credit risk. I think that the long-term plan we identify as a risk, and the Mayor has talked about where we can deal with. Of the 4 fuel specific ones, I take from the room that the fuel-related workforce one is perhaps not as significant as it needs to be, and could possibly be removed, or certainly needs to be removed at a point in time. Sorry, Roger, you got something to say to that?
Yeah, I'm happy to have it removed if necessary, but I'd like to put some context to it. At the time when this was put together and councillors agreed it, there was a 4-step programme presented by the government. They were looking at real potential situations where fuel would have to be limited, may even be stopped supply to the general public, of which most of our staff would be classed as general public. Yet at the same time, we've got responsibilities as a council to maintain business continuity and be able to stand up a response in the event of a natural disaster. So that was the availability aspect.
And I absolutely appreciate that it was done at that point in time and had complete merit in being done at that time. I guess I'm just questioning now whether it needs to remain. I'm comfortable with it remaining for a period of time if we still think that there's a risk there, but to me that's very much a point in time risk that we will be able to take off the register, if not now, then at some point soon in the future. And then the other one, I don't think that we need to have a separate software risk here. I think that that's a BAU budgeting issue. So on the basis that we make those changes, is somebody prepared to move that we accept the report?
I was going to move. And if you'll accept a slight additional change, I was going to move the recommendations with the caveat that fuel-related workforce wellbeing and availability would be deleted, as would accept and approve the addition of rising software costs risk, and a variation to the next bullet point, accept and approve the addition of staff and elected member well-being and workforce risk.
Thank you. I think
so. With those amendments or changes, I will move the recommendations.
Do I have a seconder for that? Seconded by Mayor Tavendale. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Thank you. That's carried. And thank you very much, Ken. And Joe, you have a further comment you'd like to make?
Just one more thing I'd like to add, that the Park Committee accept and approve the addition of a Head Start risk to be developed.
Yes.
Just to be really clear on that.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. So do we have somebody moved by Councillor McCone, seconded by?
So apologies, I'm just making sure we've got catch up. So accept and approve the addition of a Head Start risk and develop some
metrics and treatments
around that. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. And so that was appropriate risk metrics and treatments.
Yeah.
Excellent. So that remains moved by you, Councillor McCone. Moved by Mel.
Yeah.
Seconded by John. Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Thank you very much. That's carried. And again, thank you, Ken and Joe, for that. We'll now move on to agenda item. Let me get my little sticky piece of paper out. 5.6, the procurement update. And we've got Richard and Angela in the room with us. And Joe, do you want to introduce this paper as well?
Yeah, just to acknowledge the report, which aligns with the recently signed off procurement policy, acknowledged and accepted by council. recognising that there is a significant amount of additional information in this report as well, but that Angela's viewpoint has been to access systems to gain the information, not necessarily the detail that sits under the information. So I just wanted to point that out, should there be a deeper dive required on any of those numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. Angela and Richard.
The report is the procurement and purchasing activity over $10,000 between March, April and May, which was actually subject to the previous procurement policy. The new one comes into effect on the 1st of July. So the next report will actually span 2 different policies. So there'll be different information in the next report.
So that shouldn't be at all confusing.
Not at all. I'll try and separate it out. Okay, so just to say to pass the report over as read, and if anybody's got any questions.
Thank you. So I guess when we move into that new, the adoption of the application of the new policy that we agreed, we'll start to see a reduction in the number of non-standard procurement processes, because that number that stands out obviously on page 50 is of the 98 procurements that we had, 80 were non-standard, and that's something that we've attempted to address through the new policy.
And the threshold changed to 30,000.
Yes. Well. Yes, as agreed. Thank you. I'll open it up to the floor for discussion or questions. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, I've got 4 questions relating to particular procurements. The first is on page 51. Yes, it is on page 51. We've entered into these all of government agreements, and a number of them make obvious and immediate sense. But what I don't understand is how we have been able to get a 20% saving on external legal services through an all of government agreement. Does that commit us to using a specific company, or how's that been done?
The all of government agreement, as all the different all of government agreements have different requirements. So some of them you do have to use the people that are on the panels, and some of them you have flexibility for legal. You have flexibility because of the nature of where we are. You won't necessarily have the legal companies that you would normally use for how do I describe it? If we've got bigger cases that require a certain technical legal person, then you would use one of the bigger firms that would fall under here. Otherwise, you would use one of your local firms. Yeah. The spend is reported by the legal firms back to MB as to how much we spent through them. And then the reduction is the indication of what the actual cost reduction would be. It's sort of averaged across all of government. They don't have it specifically by every single transaction. So it's an indication of what the reduction would be.
And the lion's share of legal fees associated with all of government contracts would probably fall into the wider, more sort of generic, larger uses of legal resources that we would do with multiple councils rather than on our own. So it's not. Yeah. We still very much use local solicitors for the lion's share of our work because of
this spend is not in addition to anything that's previously been reported. Everything will have been reported. This is more just to let you know how the contracts are performing that we've signed up for.
Yeah, and it's great because it shows that there's value in being part of an all of government procurement strategy where we're able. Councillor, sorry.
Okay, just going on. Next page 52. I'm just curious to know whether the 2 direct engagements, admittedly for smaller sums of money, but were like-minded training and go-get to SharePoint migration. Oh, that's the company, obviously, with the contract name. Were they the only people able to provide the service?
sorry.
The reason I ask is I've never heard, well, certainly with regard to training, that particular company is one that I've never encountered by way of working with them. So I'm just curious to know why they suddenly surfed.
Richard, sorry, Councillor Hopkins, but we don't have that specific detail about the reason, if they were the only source or not.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, very quickly on almost there.
Great.
On page 53, there's two reporting figures, audit services, financial reports, both of them, providing a total of $425,581.
Yep.
Is that Audit New Zealand?
Yep, that's Derek.
So when did?
Well, not Derek specifically. Sorry, that was wrong. That was wrong. That's not on Derek. Yes, those are our audit fees, Jim, which we all
Well, that's
loathe.
a different figure than the one that we've been quoted previously. We've previously been told that it's going to cost us around three and a half or something. This is.
So I'll let Amanda
Okay.
answer that, but it's probably made up of several bits and pieces.
Yeah, it's made up of several audits. We get the annual report audited each year, the debenture trust deed audited each year, and also the joy of the long-term plan audit every 3 years.
Okay. So let the record show that the audit office in Wellington gets nearly $500,000 of ratepayers' money.
That is
So
correct.
on the same page, sport and leisure. What's the 345 for the grandstand, please?
Who would like to speak to that? Paul?
Looking for Mrs. Bailey, but clearly not here. That is a purchase order, not an actual purchase. So I think it was just to get allow some of the arrangements to be in place for the potential project. So that's gone in as a single order ahead of the engagement rather than sort of retroactively once costs have been incurred. So yeah, that's.
But it's not committed spend.
No.
And if it was to be committed to spend, it would come to council for.
Yeah. So yeah, there's certainly well aware of the conditions attached to the grandstand project, but there was some preliminary work that needed to be done.
Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Thank you. I can answer Councillor Hopkins's previous question around the GoGet to SharePoint migration and the direct engagement on that. That was the only software provider that could do that, and that's part of achieving the interoperability between building consent authority programs, which I spoke about earlier. So whilst it's good to move, they all come with a cost to get them integrated.
Thank you. Councillor McKine.
There are three questions, if I may. In the first green headed paragraph, whatever page that is, page 52. We have 2, 4, 5 items for the hearing panels, and which total $300,000 roughly. When do they start is the first question, and why do we need a planning consultant appointed for the proposal? Will be the first question. And then the second item down on the next line is a chamber refresh for 104,000. Could someone tell me what that's about, please?
Yep, I had the same question, John, around the commissioner appointments and the planning consultant. So is somebody able to speak to that again, Roger?
Yes, you may remember the council approved the hearings panel for the district plan work. They are the purchase orders that have been issued to those individuals to indicate the likely time charges that they will assign to the work. That is what it costs, and that's what was in the paper.
Yeah, so again, those are not spends that have happened, but it's budget. It's a placeholder for the spend that could happen that's been approved by council for those hearings.
That's correct, and it comes out of the district plan budget.
Thank you. And the chamber refresh, I can only assume is with relation to the chamber, Paul, or?
I was going to say, my understanding of the chamber refresh is that some of our technology is struggling. There's a few times that we've been offline, and there isn't a general expectation in the community that we do live stream our meetings. And so it's a technology sort of refresh to make sure cameras and bits and pieces. So all of our things like our mics, we're leaving everything we possibly can to try and keep the cost down, but there is a cost to providing the extra the clarity for our community around our meetings. And I think that's important. But yeah, there's been a few things that are starting to struggle, and we do need to kind of keep up with the technology as it goes so that we can respond to things. That's my high level understanding of it. Anything in the details, probably, Mr. Hope.
No, that's very useful summary. I think that probably the other key aspect is the current arrangement is very labour intensive in terms of the amount it actually needs to support, because it was never designed as a live streaming system. It was just designed to record meetings. So really moving, projectors are at the end of their life. The cameras has its limitations. You might keep the mics if you've ever stuck your head in the little room beside the chamber as you're disappearing down the stairs. It's again, technology has moved on a long way, and we're just looking to take advantage of that. And again, that sound issue that I think we've experienced numerous times, really want to address that.
Thank you. And again, I'm assuming that's a maximum number rather than a actual number. And to the Mayor's point before, we'll be looking to recycle whatever we can throughout the upgrade process. Councillor McKine.
I take on board what the Mayor has said. I just wonder, value for money for those that are watching, what we've got to pay is actually applicable. We can do that, but we'll leave that there because we're not going to argue about that right at the minute. We haven't got the time. But second from the bottom, we also have Waitaki Township signage, which is $200,986. Now, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm asking this question, the signage was covered by Better Off funding. Does this include, is the Better Off funding paying for this quote? I presume is to replace them, or is the signage, or what is that number for?
Paul or Amanda? Or Joe, sorry.
That's okay. Excuse me. So the actual signs themselves are being made. So this is the purchase order for those signs to actually physically be created. They are from Better Off funds, but remember, as Amanda explained earlier, we have to spend the funds prior to being able to then claim that from the government.
But I think so. The important point to take from that is that these signs are not being paid for by the ratepayer. Ultimately.
That's correct.
Perfect. Sorry, Councillor McKay.
The erection of these signs is covered in that number, or that's a plus?
The erection of the signs has been covered, excuse me, in the project plan. So that will be included in the funding. This is the purchase order just simply for making the signs.
But the whole, thank you, all the costs associated with replacement and the erection of the signs will be covered by Better Off funding. Excellent. Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, one last question, and I acknowledge in advance that it's a small amount of money, but on page 56, purchases which fall outside the procurement policy, I see there's a $15,249 grant to Heritage Week. Now, I'm curious to know what budget that came from, because I can recall back in the day when we went through budgets line by line, we actually had a standing $15,000 contribution to them, which was removed. And for some years, my understanding was we made no contribution whatsoever. So and I don't think we've got an events and entertainment budget at the moment. I know we had one, but I don't think we had one last year. So where did that 15,000 come from?
Amanda.
So just to remind everyone, when we did the long-term plan, the decision was made not to put further funding into those reserves, but we were still going to utilise the funding that remained in the reserves. So this is the final year where we're utilising anything that's left in those reserves, so that those grants have been allocated where there was available funding in reserve.
So that's where it came from?
Yeah, it would have, yeah.
All righty. Any further questions, councillor Lewis?
Thanks, Simon. Just a quick question with regards to bottom of page 53, start of page 54. Sports fields and playgrounds, Waitaki Indoor Recreation Centre, a number of items totaling around about 1.6 million. Is it the recreation centre, is it the Waitaki Community Recreation Centre, or is it the event centre, or is it grounds? How does that sort of fit, please?
Yeah, to be the event centre.
Yeah, thank you, councillor. It is indeed the event centre for those lines you've raised.
John?
Yeah, look, we can go through this all day, but there's a few things here still to pick up. So it's whatever page Nancy was that, 54?
53?
50. Top of 54.
Yep.
There are 4 items there: enforcement and solicitors' fees, which total about 41,000. Are they recoverable?
Roger?
I don't know, to be honest. It depends which way the decision goes when certainly one of them reaches court. I don't think it's appropriate to talk about individual cases in an open forum meeting.
Yeah, so I think, I spoke about this yesterday with staff. We can't talk about the specifics of any of these in this meeting, but we can commit to wherever they are recoverable, they will be recovered. And sometimes these are just the unfortunate costs of doing the business that we do in the community that we work in. But wherever they are recoverable, we will endeavour to recover them. You said you had an additional question?
I do, but not for today.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Thorling.
Yeah, I note there's been an improvement in the descriptive column of all these, which is great. I was just wondering if is there a possibility of getting a bit more detail on which particular software licenses cost or against which lines, so we could get an idea of the cost and benefit.
Yeah, look, I'll if I can answer that. I think that through the discussion in this report, and also with the previous discussion around risk and wider discussions that we've had in previous PARs, software and software costs is going to be a significant area of focus for us as a governance team over the course of the next while. And to my point earlier, there's a discussion about a series of workshops being proposed, and I think we have got a very clear direction from members here today that software costs would be a relatively high priority for those workshops to focus on. And so rather than ask Angela or Richard to provide more detail of them in this report, I would propose that we have a specific workshop where we do a really deep dive into those.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'd just like to reiterate there's a lot more detail in previous reports. So, yeah,
no, I think it's great. Thank you. And I absolutely reinforce that. This is great stuff, and you can sense the excitement in the room as we go through it. Councillor McKone.
Sorry, I lied. I've got one more question.
I need to sponge down.
Yeah. So under digital services, we have contractors general, which is nearly 69,000, and we have the digitisation of property files for 100K. Now that's been going round in a circle. So is this the final one that's actually going to digitise everything, so we're finished with this process? And what are the contractors for?
So that's an ongoing project. It spanned 3 financial years. It started last year, it's continuing this year, and there is some budgeted in the 27 financial year to fully complete the project. And this is for our contract with Canon. They're completing the bulk of the project. So we send the hard copy files to them, and they're doing a lot of the work to get it perfectly scanned in.
And these are some of the costs that we're hoping to be able to capitalise, right?
Yeah, it is. Subject to audit.
Thank you. Councillor Holding, you had something?
I was just wondering why we're carrying out the outlook.
You want to what? Sorry.
just what health falls under the three health? Would that be in regards to like food inspection, all that sort of thing? Or?
Oh, sorry. So top of page 54, there's 3 health contractors general expenses there. Might need to come back to you on that one.
There's 2 departments that could typically be referred to as health. I'm not sure what one she's classified it as, but it could either be people in is it your area?
I think we've got Roger's got the answer at hand.
The health contractors general question is the fees we pay to the external contractor that does the environmental, health and food licensing work. So that is all cost recovered.
Cost recovered. Excellent, thank you. Any further questions? No, great. Look, I think everybody, you could sense everybody's really impressed with the level of detail that's coming through in this report. I really look forward to the first report of the under the new approved procurement policy. I think that's going to be really useful. But thank you both for putting that through. Could I ask for somebody to move that we accept the report? Moved by Councillor McCone, seconded by Councillor Hopkins. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Thank you. That's carried. And because we addressed the public excluded in the public meeting earlier on, that now concludes the last agenda item on today's Performance Audit and Risk Committee. I'd like to thank everybody both in attendance and online. Thank you, Graham, for joining us for your first one. I hope that's really created some excitement for the future ones for you to attend. So thank you very much, everybody online. We're going to pause now and the council meeting will kick off as planned at 11:30. So thank you.